Welcome, everybody. My name is Patrick Nazareth. This is the MasterClass. I have around 30 years of teaching experience and I would like to help dispel your doubts, should you have any. Today, we look at the story A Shady Plot, written by Elsie Brown. Elsie Brown is a person about whom we know little. We know that she was an American. She was born on January the 2nd, 1870. She died on November the 11th, 1965. She is known for her light humorous style of fiction, particularly in writing ghost stories with comedic twists. We have hardly any information regarding her. We do know that she was published primarily in magazines during the mid to the early 20th century. How does she write? Witty dialogues, domestic comedy, bringing forth a gentle satire of American middle class life. How would you feel if you were helped by somebody you had no idea was helping you? We open with the protagonist of the story, Mr. John Hallock. He is sitting and trying to write a ghost story. His publisher, Mr. Jenkins, has asked him for one. He has to write because he needs to pay his bills. Sometimes his rent is due, sometimes his groceries need to be paid for, and Mr. Jenkins is the only one who publishes his stories, and of course pays him for it. He agrees to write a ghost story even though he has no idea, but he has been there before. He sits down, he writes, a story comes to him, but this time no such luck. John tries hard to write a story, but he is unable to concentrate. His thoughts come back to his wife, the money she spends, the new fashion she is always chasing, and other things like that that have no link to the story whatsoever. In fact, no ideas at all. He begins talking to himself, which of course is the first sign, as he calls it, of imbecility, of foolishness. He speaks aloud to himself, voicing his frustrations. And suddenly a voice answers him, agreeing with what he said. He's surprised there's no one here and he looks around wildly. He sees a form materialize, a little bit at a time, until he realizes he is looking at a ghost. She informs him that she is Helen, the one who is responsible for his ghost stories. She used to come and lean on his shoulder when he was thinking about writing ghost stories, giving him ideas which he would then just put down since he's an impressionable person, and of course Mr. Jenkins would publish them. She used to be a magazine writer in her earlier life, but had to take up a job when nobody would publish her stories. It was a very hard time for her, and when she died, she found other people like her, and they came up with the Writer's Inspiration Bureau. They looked for people like John who could be easily manipulated into writing stories for them. They are fed up with the whole affair now, for the simple reason that they are called upon all the time. Why? Because there is this new fashion, a fashion of using Ouija boards, where ghosts are summoned at any time, any place to answer questions. And she says they just cannot deal with taking up both things at the same time. The author cannot understand what is his role in all this and why she is telling him this. She goes on to make him understand that it is now his job to help them out and convince people not to use Ouija boards. But at that time, he hears his wife, and then he is frantic. He tries to get rid of the ghost as soon as possible. He doesn't want his wife to know that he's talking with a lady. She comes in, and the ghost has vanished, starting from the very bottom with the boots and slowly dematerializing. His wife asking him why he's sitting in the dark, asking him who does he think he's talking to, and goes around lighting the lamps in the room. She tells him, I have bought an Ouija board. John doesn't know what to say. This is the very thing the ghost warned him against. He tells her, please go back and return it. She says, not possible. Firstly, I bought it at a bargain sale. And secondly, she tells her husband she is interested in the spirit world even if he is not. She tries to tell him that she has bought the Ouija board for him, because suppose he needs to write a historical romance, for example, he can get in touch with the spirit of Napoleon and speak to him. John tried to convince her, but she would not listen to him, so in the end he kept quiet. The next day he went to his office. He worked in a lumber office as an accountant. He wasn't earning enough from his writing. This job gave him a modest salary which he used. When he comes back, the house help, Gladiola, asks him where have you been because Madam was waiting for him. She had told him to come home early. She had even rung up his office, but he had been so busy that he had not bothered to talk to her. She was holding a meeting of sorts, a book club meeting. Old ladies were clustered around Ouija boards. Now you needed two people for an Ouija board. One lady, Laura Hinkle, did not have a partner. She dragged her husband there and made him sit down. When they sat down at the Ouija board, the board began to move. What did it spell out? Traitor. John knew exactly who was speaking. It must be Helen. He was upset. He wanted to get out. Mrs. Inkle was surprised. She had been trying to flirt with him, but when she saw the word traitor, she asked the board, what does it mean? And the board replied, ask him. Things got curiouser and curiouser. It gave the name of Helen, and then it turned out that not just on his board, on the boards of the people around him, 5 boards in total, every one of them were giving out the name. Laura called out to his wife, who is this Helen? And of course she had no answer. John was asked who is Helen. He ran up to his room to avoid the ladies. He went to bed. The ladies finished the meeting, said their goodbyes, and went home. His wife did not sleep with him that night. She went to the guest room. The next morning at breakfast, there was no sign of her. Gladiola mutters something that he doesn't quite catch. John is not bothered that much because he's more interested in his story. He's off to write a story. A letter was slipped under the door. Who was the letter from? His wife. She told him that she is leaving him. Of course, this shook him very badly, and he said that he wished he was dead. A voice answered him, and you should be. And who materialized? Helen. She told him, I told you not to have anything to do with Ouija boards. You know we get tired, and yet you used it. John blames her for his troubles. You are the one who said everything on the Ouija board. You brought up your name, and now my wife is leaving me. Why did you do such a thing? At that time, Gladiola's voice can be heard, and she says that she is quitting her job. John tells Helen, not only have I lost my wife, I have lost my domestic help as well. Then the door opens. Lavinia, his wife, walks in. She has a suitcase in her hands. She comes to tell him that she is leaving him. He doesn't know what to say. He says okay, because all he is interested in is not allowing her to see that he's with Helen. So he's standing in front of her, trying to hide the fact that the ghost is behind him. The wife takes it differently. You want me to go? And he replies, yes, please go away. I will come and get you as soon as I am free. He doesn't understand that she's meaning to leave him. He just wants her out of the room where the ghost is. He thinks to himself, how would his pretty wife react when she comes face to face with the ghost? But Lavinia tells him, there's something wrong, you're hiding something from me. Gladiola's voice can be heard that she is leaving. So the mistress turns and asks her, why? She says, I will not stay in a place where ghosts are summoned. Lavinia says, take the Ouija board, break it up, use it as a fire. You don't have to worry about anything. We're not going to do it again. You can keep your job. The author is delighted. He is more than willing to help her break up the board. Lavinia turns to him. There is something that you're trying to hide. You better tell me what it is. She pulls him away and she looks at the ghost. John is upset. He puts his hands around his wife. He thinks that if she is going to faint, he may as well catch her. But nothing happens. She talks directly to the ghost. Turns out she was worried. She was jealous that he was having an affair with a girl. And perhaps it was Helen of Troy. The ghost says, no, I am Helen of New York. With that, she vanishes, waving goodbye to them. The author takes this opportunity to start kissing Lavinia, to let her know how much he loves her. And then he pushes her away from him because he's just got the idea for the story. What do you think he's going to write? Who are the characters in the story then? John Hallock. He's our hero who specializes in ghost stories. He's a writer who is also working as a bookkeeper in a lumber company. He's slightly henpecked, easily panics, and is sarcastic and makes fun of himself. Helen, the ghost, who is a member of the Writers' Inspiration Bureau. Previously, before her death, she was a magazine reader who died and now helps people who write. She is businesslike, she is direct, and she's somewhat irritable. Lavinia, his wife, pretty but always chasing after some new fashion or the other. She's an impulsive shopper, quick to jealousy and suspicion. Jenkins, who is John's editor, all he wants is for John to write stories for him, ghost stories. And he has this knack of understanding when John needs money. Gladiola, the Hallock's African-American cook who speaks in that African-American dialect and is afraid of ghosts. Miss Laura Hinkle, member of the book club, who flirts with John Hallock when he's forced to sit opposite her. The book club ladies, mainly elderly women, enthusiastic about this new fad of the Ouija board. The time is early to the mid-20th century when the fashion for spiritualism was at its peak and Ouija boards were the new fashion. We are in John's home, a modest middle-class home with a parlor, a bedroom, a study, and upstairs bedrooms. We see John's study, where Helen first appears. It's filled with shadows, desk, and writing materials. The parlor, where Lavinia hosts the Ouija party, and John's workplace, the lumber company where he works as a bookkeeper. What are the literary devices that are used here? Irony. There is situational irony, a ghost story writer who is actually helped by a ghost. There is dramatic irony. We know that Helen is actually a ghost while Lavinia is under the assumption that she is John's lover. The ghosts go on strike because they are overworked by the Ouija boards, the very thing that is meant to contact them. Humor. There is physical comedy, where Helen materializes bit by bit. There is situational comedy, the Ouija party where the ghost coming makes it actually a disaster. There is verbal wit and sarcastic dialogue. Foreshadowing, John's mystery about where his plots come from hint at supernatural involvement. Lavinia's tendency to go after every new fashion that come out. John's nervous muscle twitch that makes him appear to grin. Satire, there is gentle mockery of spiritualism and Ouija boards, book club ladies and their enthusiasms, the writing profession, marital misunderstandings between husband and wife, and of course, domestic middle class life. Characterization. There is direct, Helen describing herself and the bureau, and there is also indirect characterization through dialogue, actions, and reactions of the character. There is contrast. The unglamorous appearance of Helen versus Lavinia's fear of Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy was the most beautiful woman in the world. The supernatural versus the everyday domestic setting. John's creative reputation versus his actual dependence on the ghost that helped him write. Imagery. Vivid descriptions of Helen materializing, like watching one of those moving picture cartoons being put together. Hyperbole. Exaggerated descriptions to give a comic effect. Helen's enormous fishy eyes. Jaws so solid. What are the themes in this story then? Appearances versus reality. The truth about John's talent versus the ghosts who help him write. Lavinia's imagined Helen of Troy versus the actual Helen. Jealousy and misunderstanding. The groundless suspicion of Lavinia nearly destroys their marriage. The creative process. A satirical exploration of where do writers get their creative ideas. Fads and obsessions. How people are always chasing new fashions, going behind new things, like in this case, Ouija boards, without considering consequences of any kind whatsoever. Communication breakdown. Multiple misunderstandings between John and Lavinia, between the living and the dead. The supernatural in everyday life. Ghosts are present as everyday people with labor disputes. Gender roles and marriage. This is a marriage of the traditional 1920s 30s where the husband works and the wife shops. Exploitation. The ghost being overworked by the Ouija board enthusiasts parallels how John is exploited both by the ghosts and by his editor Jenkins. Truth and deception. John's inability to reveal his truth about the ghosts. How does he tell his wife what is actually happening? The commercialization of spiritualism. The trendy social aspects of Ouija boards versus actual spiritual communication. That's the lesson for you then. I do hope I have been of help. If I have, do remember to like, subscribe and share. There would be others requiring our help. Thank you so much for watching.